Hey y'all, it's Dr. Dre with The Better Way MD and my 60-week series on how to lose weight for good. Now, right now, we're taking a journey down emotions lane, and since most of us are emotional eaters, this is the perfect place to be. Now, this week's focus is on 3 emotions that I think most of us have experienced, and that's sadness, loneliness, and boredom. And I think for some of us that have either gone through menopause or in the menopause transition, this time of life can really exacerbate some of the thoughts that create these feelings. So we're going to turn and start with sadness. Of course, all of us have experienced sadness in our lives, and sadness is normal. But I think sometimes menopause can really send our brain swirling and really bring on the feeling of sadness, because menopause can sometimes signal the end of our reproductive lives. And for women who view motherhood as one of their primary identities, the end of this cycle can feel jarring and really bring about a profound sense of sadness. And if you've struggled or dealt with infertility, menopause can signal the end of the struggle. And if you haven't been able to conceive or create motherhood, you might feel a sense of failure, or even that your body has failed you. So sadness in the face of these thoughts would be a normal emotion. And the problem really comes when we feel like normal emotions like sadness aren't normal, and that we should do something to make them better. And frequently we turn to food to make us feel better because it works, albeit temporarily. And once we've gone through the carton of ice cream, not only is our sadness still there, but now we have anger for eating the ice cream on top of it. Now, for some of us, menopause is also a time for reflecting back on our lives, on what we've created or what we've accomplished, or really for those of us that are really critical, we really focus on what we haven't accomplished. And we feel as if the menopause time means that our best years are over. And if this is your mindset, then I would challenge you to reframe your thinking. So a dear friend of mine calls menopause the third quarter in life. Now, unfortunately, I've been watching a lot of football lately. And if you know me, you know football is not one of my favorite things to watch. But I've actually learned a few things, including this crazy term that now I'm completely forgetting. But anyway, what I have noticed with football is that some of the most pivotal action in the game comes in the third quarter. So in the first quarter, you kind of have this anticipation of how your team's going to play, how the other team's going to play, and you come out and you have a lot of energy around that. And the second quarter, that energy has kind of died down a little bit, and you're really just getting down to the nitty gritty of who's going to score first, or if somebody's already scored, are you going to catch up? Then you have the brief respite from halftime, and the teams come out in their third quarter, and they've kind of reset their focus. They're ready to do the donkey work of playing and winning the game. And I like this football analogy when I think about life. I want to come out in my third quarter, and I want to really focus on winning the game, whatever that might be. But I want to think of this quarter as one of strength and resilience and hope and even joy. And so I would encourage you that if you think of menopause as a time frame of loss and think of menopause as something that's happening to you, that you refocus and think of menopause as being your third quarter and something that's happening for you. Now, speaking of focus, as our children grow up and they don't need us as much, or they even move out, our focus tends to turn inward. And sometimes we can look around at the quiet and the solitude, something, by the way, most of us have prayed for at some point or other in our lives, and really feel alone and a sense of loneliness. Maybe you look at your relationship and you realize that you and your life partner have grown apart, or that you've lost a disconnection. So you can really feel lonely even when you're not alone. Some of us may find ourselves divorced or separated from our partners. And if you've never been alone in your life, this can really create a frightening sense of loneliness. And really, food is a pretty easy way to counteract that feeling of loneliness. I mean, it's hard to feel alone and lonely if you're sitting in front of Netflix watching a movie and eating buttered popcorn. Or maybe you see your alone time as kind of a reward and you really need a reward. So let's eat all of those cookies that we haven't been able to eat throughout the years because we've been sharing them. So, loneliness is definitely a feeling that I think most people feel like it needs to be fixed. And generally, we think of loneliness as filling our lives with something or someone, and that can really lead to some dysfunctional behavior or even dysfunctional relationships. And I want you to remember when you feel lonely that this is your brain creating this feeling, because as long as you have yourself, you're never going to be alone. And I feel like I'm really blessed in this sense because for the first 17 years of my life, I grew up as an only child. And I grew up in the 80s, and my mom and my dad both were working. And so it fell on me to entertain myself. And I learned through that experience that I was never alone because I always had myself, and I was never lonely because I always had my brain and my thoughts. And if you think of yourself as being your best friend, it will really be hard to be lonely. Now, let's talk about boredom and using food to fix this feeling. Boredom usually comes from thoughts like, I don't have anything to do. And nowadays, with life moving at such a fast pace and data coming at us from all sides, emails to read, social media to catch up on. Really, if our brains aren't actively engaged, we sometimes think that there's something wrong and that we are bored. Now, let me remind you that it is never true that you don't have something to do. You always have things to do. And it's really easy, though, to fall into the habit of using eating as something to do to fill that boredom. Now, if this is a cycle that you've gotten into or a habit that you've fallen into, it can be kind of hard to get out. And the next time you find yourself wanting to go out to give yourself something to do, or maybe you just want to go grab a cup of coffee because you feel like you need a job, challenge yourself on this behavior. Are you really going out to eat because you're hungry, or are you going out because you are really bored? And if you're really bored, then just stopping and asking yourself these questions can sometimes just break that loop. Now, I want to finish this week's video talking about something that you've probably caught yourself doing, and that's what I call amnesia eating. And that means that you've eaten something that you've really either eaten so fast or so disconnected you don't even remember. And you know you're doing this if you've ever caught yourself in front of an open refrigerator or an open cabinet and wondering what you're doing there. Or maybe you finish off a bag of chips and you're like, I don't even remember opening the chips. Or my favorite is when I put the bowl in the sink and I'm like, I ate a whole bowl of ice cream and didn't even enjoy it. I need a second. So if you find yourself doing this amnesia eating, it's really important to break this cycle and this habit right now, because this is definitely a weight loss killer. And there is a really easy way to break this habit, and that is to plan your food. And the farther out you can plan your food in advance and follow your plan, the better off you are. Now, I've said this a million times. I'm going to say it a million times again. If you fail to plan, you are in essence planning to fail. And I know that is true for myself. If I don't write out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to eat, I will certainly let my primitive brain spiral out of control and tell me that Oreos in ice cream is a substitute for an apple and almond butter. So this is what I want you to do. For the next 7 days, I want you to focus on planning out your food and following your plan. And at the end of the day, I want you to go back and look, did you follow your plan? And did you not Or did you find yourself not following your plan because you were eating out of sadness, loneliness, or boredom? And if that's the case, then I want you to step back and realize that all of those feelings are normal. They're all self-created, and they're all feelings that you can sit with and learn to be uncomfortable with. So I want you to go through the week. Let me know how it goes. Let me know how it feels to sit with sadness, loneliness, or boredom. All right, I'll see y'all soon.